She knew something was wrong. But it was already too late. Auntie Lola's smile wasn't warm anymore. It fell off, almost like a trap. And then, she whispered the words that sent chills down Rose's spine, her touch lingering in her body where it shouldn't. This is our secret game. And you can never tell anyone. What happened inside that house changed everything. You won't believe what happened next. Watch till the end. Once upon a time in the city of Enugu, a 12-year-old girl named Rose lived with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ease. They owned a bakery in the heart of the city, working long hours baking bread and pastries. They were hard-working and loving parents, but their busy schedule meant Rose spent a lot of time alone. Every afternoon after school, the bus would drop her off in front of their big house. She would push open the heavy front door, step inside, and be greeted by silence. The empty house felt colder with each passing day. I wish I didn't have to be alone all the time, Rose whispered to herself as she sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. One evening, her mother noticed her sadness. Rose, how about you stay with Auntie Lola after school, she suggested. Auntie Lola was her uncle's wife, a kind woman in her early 30s who had been married for years but had no children. She was always cheerful, offering Rose snacks whenever she visited. Rose liked her well enough, so she agreed. The next day after school, Rose went to Auntie Lola's house instead of heading home. The small but cozy apartment smelled of freshly cooked food, and colorful curtains swayed gently by the windows. Auntie Lola welcomed her warmly, setting down a plate of jollof rice. "This is your home too," she said with a smile. First, everything seemed perfect. They ate together, talked about school, and laughed at funny stories. But one day, Auntie Lola leaned closer and said, "Rose, I have a special game for us to play. It's a secret game just for us. No one else can know." Rose blinked in confusion. "What kind of game?" "You'll see," Auntie Lola said, her smile widening. First, the game seemed innocent. But soon it became strange, something Rose couldn't understand. Each time she hesitated, Auntie Lola would assure her, "You'll get used to it." But Rose didn't like it. Days passed, and her uneasiness grew. The game made her feel trapped, and the once warm house now felt like a cage. She started dreading the school bell, knowing it meant another afternoon at Auntie Lola's. One evening, as she sat alone in her room, her hands trembled. "I don't like this game," she whispered. But who could she tell? Would anyone even believe her? At school, her teacher, Mrs. Uche, noticed something was wrong. Rose, once lively and cheerful, had become quiet and withdrawn. After class, she called Rose to her desk. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Rose hesitated. But then, in a trembling voice, she told her everything. Mrs. Uche's expression darkened. "Rose, you did the right thing by telling me." The next day, the school contacted Rose's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Ease were devastated. They had trusted Auntie Lola. They never imagined she could harm their daughter. That evening everything changed. Auntie Lola was arrested, and Rose's parents held her tightly, promising never to leave her feeling alone again. But the scars remained. Even though Auntie Lola was gone, the nightmare wasn't over. Something darker was coming. And this time there was no one to protect her. Rose thought it was over. She thought she was safe. Auntie Lola was gone. Arrested. Taken away. Her parents promised to protect her. The house felt warmer now, no longer cold and empty. But deep inside, Rose couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was watching her. At night, she would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadows in her room seemed darker, stretching toward her bed. It was just a dream, wasn't it? Then, one evening while doing homework in the living room, the phone rang. Her mother answered. "Hello." Then a faint, whispering voice. "You shouldn't have told." The phone clicked dead. Mrs. Ease frowned. Wrong number. She placed the phone down, unaware of the way Rose's hands had gone ice cold. Rose didn't sleep that night. The next day at school, she tried to ignore the chill in her spine. She tried to focus on the teacher's words. But then, he saw her, standing across the school gate. Auntie Lola. Rose's breath caught in her throat. But how? Auntie Lola was in jail. She saw her get arrested. Yet there she was, smiling. Slow, chilling smile. Then she raised a finger to her lips. Rose's world spun. Her vision blurred. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Rose stumbled back, her pulse thudding in her ears. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing the image away. When she opened them, Auntie Lola was gone. A shudder ran through her. Maybe she imagined it. Maybe she was just tired. But then Beezy nudged her. Rose, are you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost. Rose forced a laugh, but it came out shaky. Hey, I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She was anything but fine. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Students poured out of their classrooms, laughing and chatting. Rose walked slowly, her mind a storm of confusion. Maybe she should tell someone. Maybe she should tell her parents. What if they didn't believe her? What if they thought she was losing her mind? She sighed, dragging her feet down the street. A cold wind brushed against her neck. Her heart lurched. She turned around. Nothing. Just a normal street. People walking, cars passing. She exhaled in relief and continued walking. But then something caught her eye. Across the road, half hidden behind a tree. Figure. Rose's throat closed. Auntie Lola. She wasn't smiling this time. She just stood there, staring. Rose's skin prickled with fear. She turned and ran. Her house wasn't far, just a few streets away. She sprinted, her breath ragged. She didn't dare look back. She reached the front door and banged on it. Mom. Open the door. The step. The door flew open. Her mother's worried face appeared. Rose, what's wrong? Rose pushed past her, locking the door behind her. She turned, panting. I saw her. Her mother frowned. Saw who? Rose swallowed hard. Auntie Lola. Her mother's face paled. But Rose, she whispered. Auntie Lola is still in prison. The blood drained from Rose's face. Then, who was she seeing? Rose's stomach twisted into knots. Still in prison. Then, who was the woman she saw? Her mother placed a firm hand on her shoulder. You must be imagining things, sweetheart. It's the stress. You've been through a lot. Rose wanted to believe that. She really did. But the way Auntie Lola had stared at her, unblinking, motionless as if she were waiting, that was real. She knew what she saw. That night, Rose lay in bed, her body tense. Every creak, every rustle of the wind made her flinch. She pulled the blanket up to her chin and squeezed her eyes shut. But, her breath hitched. A soft sound, barely audible. But, from outside, near her window. Rose sat up slowly, her heart hammering. The curtains fluttered slightly, though there was no wind. She swallowed. Maybe it was a tree branch. Maybe it was a stray cat. But deep down she knew better. Then, as if to confirm her worst fear, her blood ran cold. A single tap on the glass. Then another. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She turned on the flashlight, aimed it at the window. Nothing. Just darkness. She exhaled shakily, laughing at herself. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. A face appeared. Bill. Smiling. Butching. Rose screamed. The door burst open and her parents rushed in. Rose. What is it? Her father demanded. She pointed at the window, her breath ragged. She was there. She was looking at me. Her father hurried to the window, flung it open and peered outside. Silence. Then he turned back to her. There's no one there. Rose shook her head furiously. I saw her. I know I did. Her mother sat beside her, smoothing her damp hair. Honey, you're safe. It was just a bad dream. Rose wanted to scream. Why wouldn't they believe her? But as her father closed the window and turned off the light, she caught one last thing. Faint whisper. Right outside. You shouldn't have told. Rose felt the breath leave her lungs. That voice. It was the same one from the phone call. She gripped her blanket, her body frozen in terror. Did her parents hear it? Did they feel the same icy chill crawling up her spine? Her mother kissed her forehead. Try to sleep, sweetheart. We'll talk in the morning. Her father gave her a reassuring smile before switching off the lamp. You're safe, Rose. I promise. Safe. Well, she wasn't safe. Not when Auntie Lola, or whatever that thing was still out there. Her parents left the room. The door clicked shut. Silence. Rose squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block everything out. Scratch. Scratch. Her pulse spiked. The sound was coming from the window. She turned her head slowly, her breath catching in her throat. Scratch. Scratch. Like fingernails dragging against the glass. Rose's body locked up. She wanted to scream, but the fear choked her. She gasped. It wasn't coming from the window anymore. It was coming from her closet. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. The closet door creaked open. A sliver of darkness. Rose clutched her blanket like a shield. Then, through the tiny gap, single eye, watching. A whisper. I told you not to tell. Rose's throat locked. Her body wouldn't move. The eye in the darkness didn't blink, just stared, watching, waiting. Then the closet door creaked open wider. Hand. In. Reaching. Rose's breath hitched. Run. Move. Scream. Do something. But she was frozen, trapped in the weight of her fear. The whisper came again, closer this time. You shouldn't have told. Then the hand grabbed the edge of the closet door, pulled it open. Waiter. And then, a step. Outside her room. Heavy. Low. Coming closer. Rose's mind spun. Was it her father? Her mother? The footsteps stopped. By side. Or. The handle twisted. Rose's heartbeat pounded in her ears. The closet door slammed shut. At the exact same time, her bedroom door burst open. Light flooded the room. Her father stood in the doorway, eyes wide. Rose! What's going on? Rose gasped, her chest heaving. She turned to the closet. It was shut. Completely shut. Like nothing had ever happened. Her mother rushed in, hugging her tight. Sweetheart, you were screaming. What happened? Rose opened her mouth, but she didn't know what to say. How could she explain? How could she tell them that Auntie Lola was here? That she wasn't just watching from outside. She was inside the house. And worst of all, she wasn't alone.
Rose thought the nightmare was over, but she was wrong. Who was inside the closet? How did Auntie Lola return? And most importantly, what does she want? Part 2 is coming soon, but be warned, things are about to get even darker. Don't miss it. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and be ready, because some secrets refuse to stay buried.